What is going on, guys? Money Webby here, back again. Week 3 with my favorite DFS picks for the week at every position. We got 3 guys to narrow down your research based on everything I'm looking at, like the projected point totals, the kind of the pace of the game, some matchups, whether it be the pass coverage or some receivers for the quarterbacks and stuff like that. So some good information here, and 13 games, so a ton of good options to choose from. So go ahead and drop a like in the video before we get going. It really helps me out so I can keep these videos coming your way every single week. We got over 300 likes on last week's video. Let's see if we can get over 400 on this one. Maybe I'll put together like a giveaway or something like that if we can hit that. So thank you. Be sure to do that. And if you happen to be new here to the channel, hit that subscribe button to get these videos the remainder of the NFL season. I also upload some waiver wire picks. Just uploaded that video yesterday, so you can go ahead and check that out before we get going if you want to pick up some guys to figure out your season-long stuff. So, yeah, do all that good stuff. And quarterback, let's get into it. First guy up, I'm going to go with my boy Patty Mahomes. The guy that's been balling this year. I think he could be pretty highly owned, but this is going to be another shootout against San Fran. Their pass coverage hasn't been great as well. Pittsburgh, a really bad unit. San Fran, kind of similar. Besides Richard Sherman, like their pass coverage is not great at all. So I think Mahomes can have another big week. We saw Matt Stafford carve them up last week, 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. And this game is projected for 56.5. That's the over/under. And the Chiefs, they have an applied team total of 31.5, highest on the slate. So Mahomes, you want a nice piece of this Kansas City offense. Mahomes gets you some exposure to every receiver pretty much, because he's going to be the one throwing it to him. So I think he could have another huge week. So at 7,000, the price is honestly worth it. I think he can go over like 30 DraftKings points again this week. And for my second guy, Deshaun Watson, seems like he shook off some rust towards the second half and the end of that game against the Titans. He won for 26 DraftKings points, started to get the deep ball going to Will Fuller and Hopkins in the second half, and he still has that rushing ability. The first 2 weeks we've seen 44 rushing yards and then 40 in week 1 against the Patriots. So some good stuff, has that upside. As we saw last year, he had some huge games, and this is a really good matchup. We saw the Giants against Dallas on Sunday Night Football, and they really have no pass rush. Olivier Vernon, he was out last Sunday. He didn't practice at all leading into the game, so I would expect him not to be practicing or just not playing again here against the Texans. And even if he does play, their pass rush is still below average, and without him, they're even like worse, probably one of the worst pass rushing units in all of football. So I think Watson, that's really his biggest concern, is their offensive line, giving him time to find guys. And with that below average pass rush, like I said, he's going to be allowed more time to find guys like Hopkins, Will Fuller on those deep passes. So I think he can have another good game, go around like 300 passing yards, get those rushing yards, and be able to get like 2 to 3 touchdowns in this game. So a really good play at 6,100. I like the price tag there. And for a value guy, I think Andy Dalton is in a really good spot here at 5,700. Going against the Panthers. I mentioned Matt Ryan last week. He had a really good game, over 30 DraftKings points. And I think Dalton could go for around 25 and in this matchup at 5,700. Really good price tag. And without Joe Mixon, I think they're going to be turning more to the pass like they did in that last game against Baltimore. They won for 42 passing attempts. Gio Bernard kind of just makes them more pass-oriented because he's not really a guy that's going to be able to run the ball over 15 times. So I think they're going to be spreading out this Carolina defense. Their secondary is not very good, and also their pass rush is one of the worst in the league as well. So Andy Dalton should have plenty of time to find guys like A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, Eifert, even maybe John Ross. So I think he can have a good amount of passing yards, has that ability to put up some touchdowns with the weapons like Eifert and A.J. Green in the red zone. So at 5,700, a really good value, like I said. So that's my third and final quarterback. So you got Dalton, Mahomes, and Watson. I think 3 of the highest kind of value guys. They're not really value, but like upside. I think Mahomes could go over 30 plus, like I said. Watson could flirt with 30 DraftKings points, and Dalton could go for 25, maybe even 30. So those are my quarterbacks. And now for running back, ALVIN KAMARA, however you say his name, 9,500. Just a really good spot here going against Atlanta. I think he's going to have a huge week similar to that huge game we saw against Tampa Bay. I don't think we'll be able to go over 40 DraftKings points, but he's going to be very active in this receiving game. The Falcons is a prime spot for pass catching running backs. Last year we saw them allow the most receptions to the running backs, and this year again, McCaffrey going off for 14 catches last week. Without Deion Jones, that's a big loss in just their overall defense and guys matching up on the running backs. So I think Alvin Kamara can have a huge game here, go for like 8 to 10 catches, and he's very active in the red zone. He's had 6 carries inside the 10, which is the second most in all football. So I think he'll bounce back here, be able to get a touchdown or two, be more active in the receiving game. The Falcons have some solid cornerbacks and stuff like that, so that could limit Michael Thomas a little bit here, making Kamara more of a factor in the receiving game. And I think you could see a few more snaps here. He still got over 70% of the snaps last week against Cleveland, but Gillislee has been putrid. And with Mark Ingram almost back, it's a 4-game suspension, so he's going to be back in like 2 weeks. So you don't need to worry as much. I think you can kind of limit Kamara on the snaps and his usage once Ingram comes back. This is a game like almost a must-win game here going against Atlanta. You don't want to drop to 1-2 and give a win to another team in the division, especially with Tampa Bay looking pretty solid, Carolina pretty solid. So that will put them in a little bit of a hole. So I think they're going to want to keep Kamara, their best weapon, or like second best weapon, of Michael Thomas, who's been beasting on the field as much as possible. So I think you could see 80%, maybe even more of the snaps. So a really good play there, obviously at 9,500. I think he's worth paying up for. So my second guy, though, a little bit cheaper, Jordan Howard at 6,500. Just a really good game script here going against Arizona. Their defense has just been allowing touchdown after touchdown, big play after big play. So I think Jordan Howard, a really good spot with a positive game script. Carolina should be up in this game, meaning Jordan Howard should get a lot of rushes, get maybe even like 20 carries in this game. And Seattle, their run defense looked pretty solid last week, or Monday Night Football yesterday, so that definitely limited him a little bit. He really didn't have any room to operate, but I think he'll have some more space in this game, be allowed the opportunity to score a touchdown. Hasn't gotten one yet, but Cardinals, they're just allowing everything to offenses, so I think they can drive down the field and Howard can punch one in, and they're allowing 38 fantasy points per game to running backs. That's the most in the NFL right now. So at 6,500, Howard could go for like 80 yards, maybe even 2 touchdowns, and this be a really good value. One of the top running backs on the slate if you can punch in some touchdowns here, and a really good matchup against Arizona. So that's my second running back. And for my third guy, this guy's going to be really chalky, but Corey Clement here at 4,300. It's just a really good value. It's impossible not for me to talk about with Jay Ajayi possibly out, and also Darren Sproles possibly out. So one of the best offenses in football, Clement could see over 50% of the snaps and be very active in the receiving game, especially if Darren Sproles is out. If Darren Sproles does play, he will be on my radar as well, because I think he'll be very active in the receiving game and be able to get like 5 carries or something like that to kind of mix in with Corey Clement. But I'm assuming Sproles is out and even Jay Ajayi is out. They came out and said today that Jay Ajayi is unlikely to play, and also they promoted Adams, one of their practice squad players, to the roster. So I'm assuming that means that they're expecting to be without both of those guys. So I think Clement at 4,300, just a very good spot here, obvious spot. I think everyone's going to be on him, but in cash games, I think you got to roll him out. Then GPP, still, he's such a good play, but you could pivot to another guy I'm about to mention right after this. So pretty obvious. And the Colts are allowing the most catches to running backs through 2 games, allowing 22 receptions. So Clement could easily go for like 5 catches, be able to run the ball like 10 times, and could definitely get a touchdown in this game. So he could be a tremendous play with both of those guys out. The Eagles are implied 27 points. So definitely an obvious play there, running back. And for my guy that you can pivot, though, off him, if you kind of want to go a little bit contrarian in GPP or something like that, 4,500 for Dion Lewis. So on paper, against Jacksonville, definitely not a good matchup. But the thing is, with this game, I think the Titans are going to be down here to Jacksonville, meaning Dion Lewis is going to be getting the majority of the touches at running back and the majority of the snaps. It seems like every time they're down, the Titans are turning to Dion Lewis over Derrick Henry. So a good game script for Dion. And Jacksonville, they kind of funnel some work to the running back in the receiving game, like we saw with James White last week. The guy got 7 catches, and Dion Lewis had 7 grabs against the Jaguars in the AFC Championship last year for the Patriots. So I think he can get around like that 5 to 7 catches. We saw 5 catches from him week 1 against Miami, and that was when they were down. So in this game, without Delaney Walker and stuff like that. I think Lewis is going to be much more involved in the receiving game, which is great for full point PPR. And against Jacksonville, I think they'll be down here, and they could get both of their starting tackles back in this game. Luan was out with the concussion, and Conklin, or however you say his name, the right tackle, was out with a knee injury, but they're expecting to get both of them back at practice, so they could be back with their good stud tackles in this game, which will really help Lewis on the ground as well. So at 4,500, really good value for his ability to receive the ball in this matchup against Jacksonville. So that's a good pivot if you want to pivot off Corey Clement. But those are the running backs. KAMARA if you want to pay up, and then you can mix in those cheap guys like Clement. Howard is a solid little price at 6,500, and you honestly could go like Dion Lewis and Corey Clement if you just want to pay up for KAMARA and go a cheap guy running back and then a cheap guy at flex like Dion Lewis. So those are the running backs. And now for wide receiver, AJ Green, I think he's primed for another good spot here. Against Carolina. I mentioned how without Joe Mixon, I think they're going to turn to the passing game a little bit more. And you can pair him with Andy Dalton as a nice little upside duo because I think A.J. Green could see northwards of 10 targets in this game and be a factor in the red zone again. He's already had 3 targets inside the 10 this year, so can definitely get a touchdown or 2 against Carolina, who's not very good in the secondary. James Bradbury was really bad last year. He's been okay so far this year, but I think A.J. Green can get the better of him in this matchup. Like I said, Dalton, I think he can go over 40 passing attempts, and a lot of that is going to be going towards A.J. Green. So at 7,500, really good spot. He's looked really good this year. So that's my first top wide receiver if you want to pay up. Obviously, these guys are solid, but if you want to pay up for KAMARA, it's really hard to pay up for a guy like Thomas or Tyreek Hill up there. So for my second wide receiver, though, T.Y. Hilton at 6,700. Really consistent work through the first 2 games, obviously with 11 targets in both of those games, 21 DraftKings points and 15 DraftKings points. And even in week 1, he had a really tough matchup going against William Jackson, a guy that really matches up well with him. But no one in this Philadelphia secondary, I think, can limit T.Y. Hilton. Like we saw with DeShaun Jackson last week, the guy got a 75-yard touchdown. He's a burner like D-Jack, so I think Hilton can get some deep passes here and be that move the chains kind of guy as well for the Colts. So he can do it in both facets of the game, make him very safe and a productive guy in this game against Philadelphia. And also, they're going to have a more positive game script. They were up like the whole entire game against Washington. They didn't have many plays because Washington was just doing a bunch of like dink and dunk stuff as they were down. I think they had like over 70 plays, and the Colts had not that many. I think Luck only had 31 pass attempts against Washington, and then 53 against Cincinnati week 1 when they were kind of close and trailing at the end. So I think Hilton could get, honestly, maybe even like 15 targets in this game in a really solid matchup. And I think he can go over 100 yards and possibly get a touchdown here. So a really good spot. I like his price tag. I'm not sure why he's not over 7,000, but I'll take the discount. In a really good spot. Like I said, I think the Colts are going to be down in this game, so a good game script for Hill in there. And for my final guy, Keelan Cole, the guy who looked like a man possessed last week against the Patriots with one-handed grab on the sidelines. He was just everywhere, it seemed like, against the Patriots. Really solid, 7 for 116 with the touchdown. And then another good matchup here is coming against an ex-Patriot and Malcolm Brown, who has been the punching bag of the league so far at cornerback. The guy has allowed 257 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is the most yardage out of any cornerback allowed so far this year. So Keelan Cole, he should be matched up against Butler, and I think he can definitely get the better of him. Butler seems like he's past his best days. It seems like he was kind of working. I don't know. People didn't really know that much about him when he first came in. He was kind of relying on just his willpower. The guy would go 110%. But now that his athleticism, we know it's not great. It seems like teams really know how to get the better of him now. And Keelan Cole, a really good wide receiver. I think he's the best wide receiver on this Jacksonville team. I think he can have an extremely good game again here at 5,600. Can get around like 6 grabs, maybe like 80 yards and a score here in a good matchup against Butler. So that's my final guy. So I'm kind of paying up for the most part at wide receiver. There is some like flyer guys definitely that are cheaper, but those are like the safest bets, I think, for production. And AJ Green, T.Y. Hilton, and Keelan Cole. So now at tight end, this is where you can go a little bit more cheap, I think, here. Like always, you can find some cheaper production at tight end. So for the first guy, George Kittle is in a really good spot going against San Fran. Going against Kansas City. I mentioned how this game is likely going to be a shootout. Kittle didn't see that good production last week against Detroit, but it was because Garoppolo was kind of spreading the ball around to everyone, and he should have got a touchdown, but it was a pass interference on him in the red zone. Before he was able to grab the ball for a score. So that was kind of annoying, but at 4,500 here, I think they're going to be down most of the game, San Fran, and they, like we saw with Pittsburgh last week, they were just passing the ball at will against Kansas City, and their running defense actually looked pretty good, surprisingly. So I think Garoppolo and the San Fran offense is going to have to spread them out, go through like Kittle, Garcon, and Goodwin if he is back. And I think Kittle can be a good factor in the red zone as well. Jesse James, a tight end that is not very good, somehow went 5 for 138 and a touchdown against his Kansas City defense. So Eric Berry, he is expected to be back at practice this week, but I would expect him to be out at another game here against San Fran and maybe be back like week 4. So George Kittle, extremely good matchup. I think it's going to be a shootout, a lot of passing in this game for Garoppolo, and he definitely loves George Kittle, even though he didn't get as much work last week. I think they'll do a better job of getting him some targets here in this game. So that's my first tight end. For my second guy, I think this guy is going to be extremely low owned, but Charles Clay at 3,000. He has the opportunity in this matchup to finally burst on the scene. Like, they're 17-point dogs, so they're going to have to pass the ball. LaShawn McCoy, he's banged up, has like a fractured rib or something like that. He might play through it. And even if he does, I'm guessing they'll limit his touches and his snaps, meaning more work could be directed Charles Clay's way. And the offense looked pretty solid, actually. With Josh Allen, a lot better than without Nathan Peterman. So Clay could get around like 5 catches, I think, in this game. And the Vikings have been pretty bad against tight ends so far. They're allowing the 5th most receiving yards to tight ends. Jimmy Graham went for like 90 yards last week against them. So Charles Clay, I think he can have a sneaky, solid game, get like 5 catches for like 50 yards and possibly a touchdown as they're down probably the whole entire game here. So at 3,000. Doesn't need to do much to return value, but he's just going to be able to allow you to pay up for some more guys at receiver, quarterback, and running back in the other positions and stuff like that. So at 3,000, really good value with some upside and a solid kind of spot there. And for my final guy, every single week I'm going to go back to this guy, it seems like, until they raise his price, I guess. So Eric Ebron at 3,400, another score here last week against Washington, and that was not a good game script. Like, he did all his work in the first half with 3 grabs for 26 yards and a touchdown. And like I'll continue to say, this guy is their red zone weapon. He's gotten 2 touchdowns, obviously, in the first 2 weeks in the red zone. And Frank Reich, their head coach, actually said he wants to get him more involved in the offense. Jack Doyle has been really bad in the receiving game. He's an extremely good blocker, but I think Ebron can still be on the field with Jack Doyle. They can put Ebron like in the slot, go 2 tight end set, or split Ebron out wide in the red zone and stuff like that. And like I said, I think they'll be down in this game, the Colts, that is. So that means more pass attempts for Luck. Only 31 last week. Should get closer to like 40 in this game, meaning a possibility for Ebron to get closer to like 5 catches. And can definitely get a score here in this matchup against the Eagles. So at 3,400, a nice value play again here at tight end. So that's my final guy. So Eric Ebron, Charles Clay, and George Kittle are the guys. 2 of them were in the plays last week with Ebron and Kittle. So I really like those values again. And now for defenses, this price tag really confused me, but the Cowboys defense at 2,200 going against Seattle. We saw them against the Bears on Monday Night Football. The defense, the offensive line did not look very good. I think Russell Wilson got sacked like northwards of 5 times maybe in that game. And this Cowboys pass rush is very good. They got 6 sacks against the Giants last week, good for 12 DraftKings points. So I think they can get after Russell Wilson in this game. Their defense is underrated. It's a really solid unit. And going against Seattle without Doug Baldwin probably in this game, this offense is not good. So the Cowboys really can get after him and limit this running offense and just limit this really no weapons on this offense without Doug Baldwin. So the Cowboys defense, really good spot at only 2,200. Extremely good value. Don't need to do much at all return value at that price tag. And I think they'll be pretty chalky just based on that price tag. So, I don't know. It's just way too good of a price. So, that's my first defense. And next up, the Texans defense is also a solid little price at 2,800 going against the Giants. Like we saw with the Cowboys, they really got after Eli Manning in that last week game. Their right tackle was extremely bad. They also lost their center. So, I think a guy like J.J. Watt can finally get it going in this matchup. They could easily get Jadeveon Clowney back here, who was out with an injury against the Titans. So a good spot here going against the Giants. They really can't get the run game going. So if the Texans can limit the run game again here, like they haven't been allowing too many yards, like only 183 passing yards and 280 total yards last game. But the Titans played a really conservative offense, so that didn't allow them to get as many DraftKings points with only 2 and 1 sack last week. But the Giants, they kind of open it up a little bit more and allow Eli Manning to get sacked a few times and stuff like that, and he can definitely throw a pick or two. So the Texans defense at 2,800, I think they're a solid little spot if Clowney comes back especially, and J.J. Watt, maybe he's kind of shaking off the rust in the first 2 games, and he can finally get it going here against the Giants. Like, it's J.J. Watt, he's going to get a sack eventually, so the Texans, really good matchup there. And for my final defense, if you want to pay up, you can definitely go to the Bears defense. Going against probably the worst offense, maybe the second worst offense beyond the Bills so far in the NFL. So the Bears, Khalil Mack, it seems like everyone loves this guy now. Can't stop talking about him, but obviously he's a great football player. He can get a sack or 2 in this matchup against Arizona. They can get a pick off Sam Bradford, definitely, and they should have like a positive game script with the fact that they should be up. Arizona will have to pass the ball a lot here and force some sacks and picks here and be able to get those DraftKings points and just fantasy points in general. So at 3,500, great spot, obvious here against one of the worst offenses. But that is it for the defenses, Cowboys, Texans, and Bears. And those are all your plays. You got some of my favorite guys at every position. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to slap a like on it. Like I said, over 400 likes. Let's see if we can do it. Thank you if you can do that for me. And definitely subscribe if you haven't already to get these DFS plays the rest of the year. Some really good information. I do a lot of research on these videos. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and you can comment any questions down below in the video for if you want to try to make me decide between a few guys or anything like that, or maybe some of my thoughts and other options. And you can follow me on Twitter at MoneyWebby for some more questions if you want to reach me there on Twitter. So I wish you guys the best of luck on this Week 3 slate. Win some money for me, and we'll see you back here again next time.